Tonight, Bank of Ghana in urgent search for recapitalization support from government following historic 60.8 billion CD loss that has left it significantly weakened.
We will have to recover as we move along, but we will be making an assessment for the potential need for recapitalization support from the government in the medium term.
Meanwhile, the minority in Parliament is serving notice the recent BOG expenditure will be subject to value for money audit and the future NDC government.
And I want to tell Dr. Addison that in future we will subject these numbers to value for money audits. We will understand how it is that it is reasonable to spend 33 million on communication. How reasonable it is for you to spend 97 million on travel.
We are live in Parliament where the minority is insisting the purported write-off of part of the debt owed the central bank by government is void.
The so-called write-off of 32 billion is inconsequential. It has no parliamentary approval, and as a matter of fact, the accounts should be restated as prior year actions.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Vodafone. The minority in Parliament is serving notice tonight that it will subject some recent expenditure made by the central bank, the Bank of Ghana, to a value for money audit. It comes on the day we're getting clarity from the central bank that it's going in search urgently of recapitalization support from government after recording a historic 60.8 billion CD loss that has left it significantly weakened. There is intense pressure now being brought to bear on the central bank to account for what happened. The central bank has been explaining that the loss that it recorded is largely down to the domestic debt exchange program. We'll hear from them pretty shortly, extensively. But I want to take you to Parliament today, where the minority has been addressing the press on the subject. Listen to Isaac Adongo, who is the ranking on the Finance Committee.
The so-called write-off of 32 billion is inconsequential. It has no parliamentary approval, and as a matter of fact, the accounts should be restated as prior year actions next year when the auditors get back there, because there is no parliamentary approval. We have not written off any 32 million. Of course, impairment, we don't have a problem with impairment because that is a standard accounting practice. But write-off, they must come under Section 53 of the Public Financial Management Act. And tell Addison I'm waiting for his next press conference. The so-called write-off of 32 billion is inconsequential. It has no parliamentary approval, and as a matter of fact, the accounts should be restated as prior year actions next year when the auditors get back there.
I want to take it to Parliament right now, and my colleague Kweku Asante is on the line with me with more on this. Kweku, this is a subject that is dividing opinion in the House, but we're seeing the minority take the lead in putting a bit more pressure on the central bank and the government.
Definitely, Evans. According to the acting ranking member on the committee, if you look at how the central bank went about this duty, it is clearly an offense to the Public Financial Management Act, a side section of the law to say that no state institution can purport to write off public debt without having to come first to Parliament for a resolution to that effect. And in fact, he insists that the Bank of Ghana governor is acting on its own and deciding on some of the things he wants to do without recourse to the laws of the country. He insists that the processes that are available to them in the House, the processes that are available to them outside, including him personally going to court to vindicate these provisions of the Public Financial Management Act, he will do so. He also goes on to talk about some of the expenditures that has been listed in the Bank of Ghana's report that has been subject to public controversy in the last few days. He says that some of those expenditures simply did not meet value for money consideration. And if the Bank of Ghana does not do so now, a future NDC government will be produced matters.
So you write to the Minister for Finance say that the auditors, when I'm preparing my account, you have said that we should write off 32 billion. Please go to Parliament and seek approval for us to write off the 32 billion because they are public funds. You see, Bank of Ghana is not somebody's insurance company. It is not the same as Fidelity Bank or other financial institutions that you can bulldoze your way and write off. These are public funds. They must come to Parliament by a resolution of a simple majority. And the resolution must state the amount involved. It must state how much is written off. So I want to ask Deloitte and Touch, the auditors of Bank of Ghana, whether they saw any resolution from the Parliament of Ghana authorizing the write-off of 32 billion. And on the basis of which they approved the accounts and expressed the opinion that they expressed on the account. When you are auditing an institution, particularly a public institution, you need to be conversant with all its legal obligations and make sure that the accounts and operations are consistent with its mandate. That you saw 80 billion, you have reported that 80 billion was subjected to DDEP. You did not go to the law of Bank of Ghana to find out whether it has the mandate to give 80 billion to the government of Ghana. And yet you say you have expressed an opinion. I have a difficulty with Deloitte and Touch. These are my colleagues, chartered accountants. And they should know that these are legal covenants governing the Bank of Ghana.
And Kweku, this obviously is one of those key issues that the minority is determined to get Parliament to take action on. Have we heard anything from the majority side?
None so far, Evans. Within the precincts of Parliament, we've seen some key majority MPs on the Finance Committee. We tried to talk to them about this. They have not spoken about it. In fact, it has actually landed on the floor itself. Even on the floor of Parliament, no majority MP spoke to it. Isaac Adongo, while supporting a motion to consider the debt restructuring program and to request that the Finance Minister brings it before the House for approval, he raised those significant issues, but there was no response from the majority side. It appears the majority side do not want to go into those matters yet, and we haven't heard from them yet. It's only the minority who have been harping on this issue for the time being.
Could you stay with me because there's a lot happening on the floor. We understand that a motion has now been passed to compel the finance minister to submit the details of the domestic debt exchange to the House. I'll come back to you with details on that pretty shortly. But we've been hearing the last 24 hours from the Bank of Ghana explaining how they incurred so much losses on its books. I want you to listen to the Director of Research at the BOG, Dr. Philip Abredu Otu, clarifying the issues, insisting that it is down largely to the domestic debt exchange program, but also the plans that they are currently pursuing to bring the central bank back to good health, including seeking recapitalization support from the government.
Yes, but if you look at the numbers, you'd clearly recognize that close to 90% of that loss of 60.8 billion was as a result of the domestic debt exchange. It's purely a domestic debt exchange impact that has run through our balance sheet that has created this hole of 60.8 billion. There were three key items, if you'd permit me to explain. So as a result of the domestic debt exchange, we had a 50% principal haircut on our non-marketable instruments, which was around 64.5 billion. So we took a haircut of 50. But remember, no other institution, the private sector and the banks did not take a haircut in all of this. It is the Bank of Ghana that has been the shock absorber to the domestic debt exchange to ensure that we return to debt sustainability over the medium term. As I was explaining, we have the marketable instruments the non-marketable instrument, and COCOBOD's loans to BOG were all put in the perimeter of the debt exchange, and that resulted for the loss. These three items alone accounted for 53.1 billion out of the loss of 60.8. This is close to 90% of the loss. And you cannot say that the domestic debt exchange has not had any impact. It's purely a domestic debt exchange impact on our balance sheet. Yes, of course, there were other things, but those other things were very minor on our balance sheet.
I see. So you have a negative equity, and the Bank of Ghana still thinks that we shouldn't be worried?
Yes, we have a negative equity. We think you shouldn't be worried because I think the issue that arises is whether the bank will continue to be policy solvent. It's an issue of policy solvency. And with policy solvency, the issue is whether we can continue to discharge our mandate of pursuing price stability and financial stability despite the negative equity. And the answer is yes, we can. That is not to say that, yes, we don't need to recover. We will have to recover as we move along, but will we be policy solvent as we move on? I think, yes, we will be policy solvent. But again, we also need to recognize that we are putting in place steps and actions to ensure that we return back to positive levels. So some of the measures that we are putting in place is that we'll be retaining profits to build capital back up. We'll then be optimizing the Bank of Ghana's investment portfolio and operating cost mix to bolster efficiency. And then again, I think you said this at the beginning of your program, we will be making an assessment for the potential need for recapitalization support from the government in the medium term.
I will take you back to Parliament pretty shortly, where the Finance Minister is tonight under pressure with Parliament passing a resolution for him to present the details of the debt restructuring program to the House for consideration. Remember that, as you just heard there, the Bank of Ghana just saying and emphasizing that its historic loss of more than 60 billion cedis is down to the restructuring that we saw. The domestic debt restructuring. I want to quickly bring in banking consultant Dr. Richmond Tiahene. Dr. Tiahene, thanks for your time here on Top Story. You just listened to the Director of Research at the BOG, who is emphatic. They are confident this is redeemable. They can turn this around. It's not as bad as everybody else is making it seem. Yes, they have negative equity, but he says they will remain policy solvent. You share in his optimism.
Thank you very much, Evans. I listened to him, and normally that is how we go about it. We're talking about the implications of what has happened, and it's quite considerable, especially if it's not managed very properly and very well. I heard him saying that they have a policy to retain over the years. If you made a profit of 1.2 billion, all things being equal, if you even retain 50% of the 1.2 billion for the next 10 years, I don't know how you're going to get to this point. So I wouldn't talk much about that retention policy. One thing he said, the last statement, that he will be looking for the government to support. This particular action is already in the World Bank, is in the IMF document 23-168, which said that after the debt restructuring, Bank of Ghana will face a serious capital shortages, deficiency, and they may have to go to the government with technical assistance. I use the very word, with technical assistance from the IMF. That is what he said. So for me, going to the government is where I have a little challenge. Already we have physical challenges. I mean, the physical pressures, cutting the budget, doing this and that. Although the government is already in serious trouble as far as fiscal policy is concerned. How are we going to take this on? Are we not going to add the debt again to the state? He made mention of the 50% haircut. That's a 50% haircut. It is about the overdraft accommodation given to the government, which it was not the actual debt. It was an accommodation given to the government to run the state, 61 billion. So the IMF was saying that it is not part of the bond, so you can't have it structured like the bond. That's why they were hit with 50%. The other bonds, which is remained there, had been treated like the other bonds. So when he said it, I mean, we should make it clear what components were did with 50%. Why was it done? Because we allow physical dominance to run the monetary institution, and that is the consequences that we have. I heard him saying that normally you tell me that it's a policy solvent, but how do your correspondent bank, the Bank of England and the Fed, what image are you creating before them? Can you go to the governor of Central Bank of England and tell him that we are solvent? Who will believe the statement? Even if they believe it, they will look at you with two eyes. So what he's saying that policy issues, they can do the monetary policy, they can do the lending of last resort, but what is the credibility of it? The credibility of what you're saying, how it is. It is validated by your figures. Don't forget, it is always validated by your figures. And so if you say you're going to do this and that, let us see what will happen. Well, but for me, staying far and doing the figures, we are in a very dire situation. Very, very dire situation.
Well, if you listen to the Director of Research of the BOG, his fundamental point is, yes, we are a negative equity, but do not worry, because we still remain, as far as a policy solvency is concerned, we are on top of that. We'll also perform our responsibility. Is when you listen to him, you share in that point that he's making there. You agree with him?
Well, those of us who do the research and be reading about this banking solvency all over the world, central banks all over, he may be right to a certain extent, but our case is a bit different from what happened in other jurisdictions. I have read a lot since the thing started. I've read a lot, including about countries, Thailand, Korea. I've read a lot. But yours is a bit different. Ours is something that has hit us because somebody did not do his work. Today, the first deputy governor has given a lecture. I watch it. He's not worried about the physical dominance over money dominance today. So if we are saying things and your big man is also saying another thing, who do we want to believe? If we have done our work, if we have said no, we can't let you go this way. Even halfway would have been better. But the way you go on 60-something billion, look, that is the end point of it. And for me, I want to say, let me wait and see. When I said the debt estimate about the banking issue, people were saying you are alarmist. Now I have been vindicated. So even all that I will say, we are in this country. Let us wait and see how his hypothesis can be validated in the next 3 months or 6 months or 1 year. And then we can come back to the table and look at it.
We've had the minority make the point today that the expenditure of the BOG will be subjected to a value for money audit if they win power. We know that the BOG's act that sets it up makes it very autonomous. A lot of what they do is not up for scrutiny. Some have suggested it's time now to review that structure and allow a bit more oversight when it comes to the Bank of Ghana. Is that something that the state parliament should pursue?
Well, it's all about how we allow our laws to operate in this country. The parliament want to see the oversight. When the minister came to present the story about DDEP, did anybody question the cost implication and the financial ramification to the country? You see, if we don't adopt a proactive stance, and we adopt a proactive stance, we always want to do post-mortem. I would have preferred that even when this DBEP was submitted to the parliament, they would have caused people to do extensive work on it and then question the cost of the project. Unfortunately, we have allowed them to go. Let us come back to operational independence and financial independence. If we can go by the strict financial independence and operational independence, we wouldn't have these things that are happening to us. So even if it's coming under parliament supervision, and the parliament, the one party has numbers, and as we know in this country, if one party has numbers, they make useless of what the law is, because they will say yeah, and then it's gone. But if we are very objective and we go straight by the constitution and the laws, I don't think you have. So coming under banking, I don't have a problem. But the question is that, what about if I have a majority of 170 or 190? Is it not the very same people who are going to say we should do it? And we do it. What will be, when it comes to looking at it, what can you say? The harm has been done. So let us incorporate the application of the law, going strictly by the law that we have set for ourselves, like the Bank of Ghana Act. It says that 10% revenue of the last year. That is it. Fiscal responsibility, 5. Even if you do suspend it, you're not supposed to leave it haywire. No, you put restrictions on it so that it doesn't turn into the economy. So going to the parliament to supervise the Bank of Ghana, to me, is neither here nor there, because I have majority. And that is what has been going on in this country. We use the numbers not to question the rationale or the quality of what we are doing. We argue and argue, but the stance, the normal stance, the stance that will come out with figures and quantitative, it is not there. So change it, but I have numbers. We will vote veto against it.
Dr. Richmond Achahene, thank you very much. That's the banking consultant there, helping us navigate the controversy that is still brewing with the minorities' position on the Bank of Ghana losses that we've been reporting. I want to stay in Parliament now because in the last few moments, the House has adopted a motion that will compel the Finance Minister now to report to the House about the domestic debt exchange program. Kweku Asante is still with me. Kweku, this, from what I understand, is a motion that the minority brought to the House for consideration?
Yes, Evans, this motion was submitted to the Speaker of Parliament so many months ago. You will recall when the Finance Minister was asked to provide those details to the House some few months ago. The minority moved that motion. Dr. Keselato also was on the floor insisting that if Parliament had given the Finance Minister power to contract loans, he cannot, by his own pen, revise the terms of those agreements without not having come into Parliament first to seek approval. And because of this, the other side are moving this motion to compel the Minister to bring the full contours of the details of the debt restructuring program, whether it be local or foreign. He must lay them before the House and get the House to approve them. And that was the argument he advanced on the floor. Let's listen to the minority leader as he advanced that argument on the floor a while ago.
The minister responsible for finance must first seek approval from us before he goes and restructure our debt. He doesn't have to go out there and restructure the debt before he informs us. For example, if the country is insolvent or for any reason the country cannot repay its debt, it is only right for the minister responsible for finance to present a policy document to us and to inform us that Ghana will have to go through a debt restructuring program and to give us the contours of the debt restructuring program. So, Speaker, the minister decided to organize a press conference at the Ministry of Information and inform the nation without coming to Parliament. So, Speaker, this is a major government policy. If the minister, for any reason, has decided to write off the debt that government of Ghana owes to the Central Bank of Ghana, the Bank of Ghana, it is only right for the minister responsible for finance to bring a document before us and to inform us that he are going to write off a certain debt that the government of Ghana owes to the Central Bank. The minister cannot unilaterally write off debt that is owned to the Central Bank. Speaker, It is for that reason that I request of the Minister of Finance to present to us the contours, the details of government debt restructuring program. So, Speaker, I have not asked us to set up an ad hoc committee. All what I'm saying is that the minister must come here and present to us the program of debt restructuring, detailing exactly what he is trying to do. And Mr. Speaker, in your own wisdom, you can refer to the Finance Committee for the Finance Committee to scrutinize it and report to the House.
And Kweku, did he get opposition from the other side, the majority side, or they are in agreement with this proposal?
Well, it wasn't an opposition strictly so-called. The majority chief with Frank Anodon said that his side is not opposed to the idea of inquiring or having a minister bring these details to Parliament in principle. However, they believe that as a matter of principle, the Finance Committee of Parliament has the powers under the standing orders of the House to be able to go into these matters. They are tired of the minority side continuously seeking to force the House to do business that another committee of the House could do. So that was the argument that the majority chief with Frank Anodon advanced on the floor a while ago.
Demand from the sponsors of this private member motion to ask of the exchequer of our country to come and apprise the House of the trust of these important national policy, especially in the times we find ourselves as a country and also in global context. So from the outset, I have no problem with that. Safe to say that, Speaker, if you look into our orders, and I was, as my respected leader was moving the motion, I tend to look at Order 155. And Speaker, we have a committee of Parliament, Finance Committee, with clear powers and mandate. Order 155, Speaker, it says, for the purposes, Speaker, with your permit, purposes of effectively performing its functions, each committee shall have all such powers, rights, and privileges as vested in the High Court of Justice or a justice of the High Court at trial in respect, and it goes on and on.
Kweku, so this is passed now by the House.
Yes, it did come to a vote because the House did not agree on how to do this. So the Speaker of Parliament had to put it to a vote, and the minority MPs had more numbers on the floor, and they won the vote. The Speaker consequently directed that the Finance Minister should go to the Finance Committee, present the full details of the debt exchange program, be it local or international, for the Finance Committee to review it and present the report to the House for an approval or rejection.
Okay, and the Parliament is going on recess today.
Hello, Evan.
Yes, quick, I can hear you. Parliament is
going Evan, so that I have here the minority leader. Minority leader briefly on Joy FM. Evan, so you have succeeded in getting this to have the debt restructuring come to the House. You've succeeded in getting that. Some have said, your colleagues, you saw them on the floor saying that the Finance Committee should have the power. And already the Finance Minister did so in the 2023 budget. How do you respond to that? And how soon do you want to get this done?
I think it's something that we need to have it resolved as soon as possible. Because you see, the entire debt restructuring program has massive impact on the general economy of Ghana. And it also has an impact on the integrity and the image of our country. It is something that I have always contended from the onset, that Parliament needed to be apprised with, and the authority to go on to this major expedition of engaging in debt restructuring must be approved by Parliament. For some interesting reason, the Finance Minister started the journey without parliamentary approval. Now, we have heard that they have unilaterally restructured Bank of Ghana's debt to the point that Central will need recapitalization. Quote, the Bank of Ghana is now bankrupt, insolvent. What we need to do is for us to understand the basis why this restructuring happened. And so I have said that there was the need for the minister responsible for finance to appear before us and to give us the document of the debt restructuring, giving us the details, including the contours of the entire debt restructuring program.
You just mentioned the Bank of Ghana, and it's become one of the issues that you referenced in that your statement on the floor. What are you going to do about this if you insist that the Bank of Ghana does not have the power to unilaterally write off these debts?
Yes, the Bank of Ghana does not have that power. Neither does the government have the power to do this without parliamentary approval. Because Bank of Ghana is a bank that is owned by the people of Ghana. It's a sovereign bank. The shareholders are the people of Ghana. It is only the representative of Parliament of the people of Ghana that should have the authority to write off those debts. We have in the what you call the PFM Act. Clearly, we are asking the minister to come to bring it to us to seek approval from Parliament before he can do such a thing. I mean, some of them he's done it already, but he will need ratification. But I do not believe that this exercise should continue without parliamentary approval. And I'm happy that Parliament today agreed with me and asked the minister responsible for finance to present to Parliament the entire debt restructuring program, which includes the domestic debt exchange, the common framework, the agreement on the Eurobond and the Bank of Ghana debt. Everything we need to see that too.
Thank you. Evans, the minority leader just rushing into meetings with the majority leadership ahead of Parliament, taking its adjournment ahead of some of the key business that have hit a deadlock on the floor. We have a number of tax waivers that have not been dealt with. The majority have, for the lack of a better word, ganged up against one of their own, Tutukwateng, asking him to present those reports for discussion. I've seen that those ones have all been listed on the other paper. I've seen the trade minister, his deputies, all of them in Parliament, lobbying the leadership on both sides, especially the minority, to clear the path to approve these tax waivers before the House goes on break and return in October. I've just seen that the House are just taking a 30-minute break so that some of these details can be negotiated by leadership on both sides. And so everyone, we are keeping our eyes on the floor for some of these key businesses to come before the House takes its break.
And that is happening today. We're keeping a close eye in Parliament indeed, and Kweku will stay with us and bring us the very latest as and when we hear it on the day Parliament takes a long break. Still ahead here on Newsnight, Works and Housing Minister calls bluff of NDC minority in Parliament over newly launched housing project, insisting the state does not need parliamentary approval for most of the agreements under the project, with the minority side alleging illegality.
Itself does not need parliamentary approval. It's not a loan. The government of Ghana money. We don't need parliamentary approval to start the project. All right.
Plus, the Public Procurement Authority is tonight giving the green light for a transaction advisor to dispose of Saglame housing project, which will cost almost an additional $200 million just to make the place habitable.
Connecting water from the nearest water source to the site going to cater for the 1,500 housing units was going to cost government $30 million. Water alone.
In politics tonight, the campaign team of Alan Chemanting is accusing the camp of the vice president of using government establishments to induce delegates.
We were in OT, and this Assembly's Common Fund was sharing weedicides and fertilizers at this time to people. Why would they be doing that? Were they sharing to delegates? They're sharing to delegates. We were there when it happened.
More as a campaign team of the vice president hits back, describing the allegation as a low point.
Even an internal election, you are telling me that we are using district assembly common fund to purchase fertilizer. I mean, that is a very low point.
And in business, Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority justifies increase in port charges, insisting current global economic crisis and city depreciation warrant the review.
And in sports, beginning August 7, you can pick forms to contest for president of the Ghana Football Association. We have details as the election committee unveils roadmap for the election of new leadership of the association.
And later, we'll be live in Niger, where Ghanaians living in that West African country tell us that they continue to receive threats of reprisals, as ECOWAS has less than a week to decide whether to use force to remove the new military junta there.
The information that we are taking from the ground is if the ECOWAS use any force to intervene, they know that they have foreigners here. They are going to attack the foreigners.
Details as ECOWAS military chiefs say they have no other option but to confront the increasing military takeovers head on.
We cannot afford to be hamstrung by these challenges. Instead, we must confront them head on, drawing upon our shared experiences, wisdom, and the strength of our collective resolve.
Stay with us for the details right after this, including your comment 055-1111-997.
Credits where you get up to 20% of your money back before. Make I tell you about Vodafone's demo promo. See, anytime you recharge a demo, you get up to 20%, whether it be short code or your Vodafone cash wallet, or you don't use credit transfer to your number or someone else. And now you be high tech, so you don't use my Vodafone app or any payment app. However you do, Vodafone go send you up to 20% cash back. Into your Vodafone cash account. We'll reload here. But then you enter. Top up your airtime with 5 Ghana cedi or more in Vodafone's demo promo. And receive 20% of your money back straight into your Vodafone cash wallet. Recharge and cash out in the Vodafone demo promotion.
Vodafone, further together.
I've got Bell Pack and I won't let go.
My name is Nanama McBrown. Many people think I get what I want anytime because I am popular. No, that is not true. It is because me and Kasano, I like the best, and when I find it, I stick to it. I have found Bell Pack Tea Roll, and I'm stuck with it. It is soft but not weak, strong but not hard. It is just perfect. Bell Pack Tea Roll is smooth and gentle on the skin. Same as Bell Pack Kitchen Towel. It cleans in one wipe. You can soak, squeeze, and clean again. One Bell Pack Kitchen Towel lasts longer and saves you money. It's time you switch to Bell Pack today and experience the perfect paper tissue. Say pocket tissue, table napkins, tea roll, and a kitchen towel. Paper chow. Bell Pack is simply the best. Bell Pack, just perfect.
To be a Bell Pack distributor, call 055-11-44400. Another quality product from Bell Aqua.
Nothing feels so good like Bell Pack.
And you are live here on News Night. It's on Joy 99.7 FM. Now, in response to the recent uproar over the launch of the new National Affordable Housing Program at Pokwasi and Kumasi by the minority, the Minister for Works and Housing, Osafo Adu, is tonight insisting parliamentary approval is not required for most of the agreements under the initiative. The minority had raised concerns about the project proceeding without consent from Parliament, questioning government actions. We'll hear from Mr. Osafo Adu shortly, but first, here is the former Deputy Works and Housing Minister, Samson Ahi, who says it was illegal for government to go ahead with the event to launch this particular initiative.
Order paper, page 8, under laying of papers. This particular project is supposed to be laid in Parliament today. This has not been done, which means the EPC agreement has not been approved in Parliament. So if you have presented such a document to Parliament for approval, it has not even been laid. Yet we are there cutting salt to commence work. What does that mean? Is it a slap on Parliament? Is it a disrespect to government structures or what? Are you not surprised that we are supposed to take this EPC agreement through? That has not been done, but we are rushing to cancel. We were supposed to do it yesterday, but we raised these important questions and we are waiting for response from them, from the ministry, but they have gone ahead in spite of the fact that these questions have been requested. They have gone ahead today and cancel. And because we want to support any cause that provides homes for Ghanaians, we will support it, but we will not support what is illegal. But we think that what is going on now is illegal because it hasn't sought for parliamentary approval.
Well, the sector minister has been speaking exclusively to us. He disagrees. Listen.
I don't think it's the Western Housing Committee. It's the minority side of the committee. That
exactly.
They are talking about parliamentary approval. Yes. There's only one parliamentary approval that is before Parliament. And it's because one of the developers is a foreign company.
The
Moroccan company. And therefore, because it's a Moroccan company and taking part in this, you have to seek parliamentary approval. But the rest are not foreign companies. So no need for parliamentary approval for them. And the project itself does not need parliamentary approval. It's not a loan. The government of Ghana money. We don't need parliamentary approval to start the project.
All right. Let's bring in Samson. You heard him earlier. He is the former Deputy Works and Housing Minister who raised the matter on behalf of the minority. Joins us right now. Mr. He, thanks for your time here on Newsnight. You heard the minister there. He says only one of the companies being considered requires parliamentary approval, and that they will do. Does that address your concern?
Yeah, thank you very much, Evans, and let me say good evening to your listeners. Yeah, because it would have been strange for the minister to say the project doesn't need parliamentary approval. The issue is that we, as the minister himself alluded to, there is a foreign company which is going to participate in the entire housing project. And so currently there is a report in Parliament seeking parliamentary approval. As we speak, that parliamentary approval has not been given. We're still working on the report. And so our concern at that time was to let Ghanaians know that even though they've laid the report in Parliament, Parliament has not taken it, but they went ahead to cut a salt. If the minister is saying that, yes, they cut a salt for the 4 local companies, that's fine. But that was not the explanation before the salt cutting. So, because the report that we have here, they have included all the 5 companies, 4 of them a Ghanaian company, which we agree doesn't require parliamentary approval. But the foreign one, which is part of the entire project that will produce 8,000 housing units, they didn't distinguish that foreign one from the local one. And so we were asking that they should have waited for the parliamentary approval before they cut the salt. So that is our concern. If he's saying
but that concern has been addressed now, has it not?
Sorry?
That concern has now been addressed based on what you just heard from the minister.
No, but the foreign one is still pending because that motion has not been taken yet. So that's only our concern. We don't have any issues. Our concern was that you come to Parliament with a request. That request has not been granted. You went ahead and then cut short to for the companies, the 5 of them to start work. That was our concern. And that approval has not been given yet, as we speak. And so, for the minister to say that they don't need parliamentary approval is a bit strange to us.
He said it in context. He said in the context of the other companies they've considered for this, who are all local. That's what he meant when he says for those they don't need, but for the foreign company, he agrees with you. They will come for approvals. But stay with me, because the Saglame matter is something that he also addresses. He gave us a bit more detail about what's going to happen with that particular issue. You were the deputy minister when that project was conceived. He told us that as we speak currently, the Public Procurement Authority has given the approval for a transaction advisor to be procured to lead the process of identifying a suitable private sector entity with the requisite technical and financial capability to help dispose of this particular housing project, except that it's going to cost us a bit more to do. Listen to the minister.
Connecting water from the nearest water source to the site going to cater for the 1,500 housing units was going to cost government $30 million. Water alone. In fact, Ghana Water Company their estimate was even higher, much higher than Community Water and Sanitation. And these are public agencies. Electricity, you got the estimate from ECG, $8 million to connect electricity from the nearest source to that site.
Or outside the already $200 million that had gone into it.
Yes. The estimate they provided for off-site infrastructure alone, we needed $46 million to provide off-site infrastructure. Now, apart from that, there are on-site works. Okay, these 1,005 units that are at various stages of completion. In fact, some had deteriorated, needed to fix some of them and all that. The estimate was that from AESL, it needed almost, it was $29 million. There is a serious sewage system there that was not fixed. That one is 8,000. So the on-site works alone, including some amenities which will make it possible for people to live there, like school, so when you put all that together, it was going to cost the state $140 million.
$140 million
to be able to revive the Saglemi affordable housing project.
Mr. Ahi, you heard the amounts you mentioned there. Government is going ahead to try and get a private developer to take this over because $140 million in the time of economic crisis is just not feasible. What's your reaction to what you just heard?
Well, Evans, if you build, I'm not sure if the government had continued the project from 2017 will have cost that much to face the rest of the work at the Saglemi site. But if you leave it for 7 years, where all the materials on site have been stolen, even those that were completed, those have been broken into, and then the materials have been stolen. Certainly, you will need extra amounts before you can fix them. Because 7 years, if you build a house and you don't attend to it for 7 years, certainly, if you want to go back to it, if 2017 they wanted to complete the project, I'm not sure we'll be talking about $100 million. But today, if you ask Ghana Water Company to give you estimate for 2017, and it will cost $10 million, and if you ask the same Ghana company to give you estimate in 2023, even you will not end up getting that 10 million. You will get about 30 million, because we all know what is going on in the country. Cost of materials, cost of building materials. So cost of building materials in 2017 is not the same as cost of building materials in 2023. So these are the reasons why the government will need so much today if they want to go and face Saglemi. So yes, if you value the place, if you go there now, some of the structures, you can't even guarantee the structural integrity of the houses that were built.
Yeah, but you know why that happened, right? Look, at the beginning when they came in, there were issues with the procurement, the contracting. They wanted to investigate, probe, and understand it first before they move. This is a huge investment. That's why that's happening.
I agree with you. Government had issues, but that's why they referred the matter to the police, CID. Police were doing their work. Now the issue is in court. So what do? Do you say that if it will take you 10 years before you finish the prosecution, those houses there should remain there? Even if you were to take a decision, will you say that I will wait until the court process is exhausted before you go to it? Yes, if you have problem with it, that's why the government took the steps to make sure that the right thing is done. So you refer the matter to the police CID. At the moment, it's in court. So it would have been better for the government to take a decision that, yes, we are asking the court process to go on, but because it is the money of Ghanaians that have been used to put up those houses, we have to take steps to complete them early enough so that Ghanaians who are ready can purchase them.
Well, let's look at the reality, though. Let's look at the reality. Now, it's going to cost us $140 million. You agree with the government strategy. Dispose it off, let's get a private developer in to take the bidding.
Hello?
Can you hear me, Sahi?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
You agree with the government strategy, looking at the reality now, that the best approach is to dispose this off, get a private developer to take the bidding.
No, I will not agree, because if you ask the private sector to do it, the cost at the end of it will be higher than if the government had taken steps to get the resources and complete it.
Okay, thank you very much. That says something. He, a former deputy works and housing minister. So listening to News Night is on Joy 99.7 FM. To some politics now. And the campaign team of Alan Chamanting is tonight alleging the camp of the vice president is using government institutions to induce and also get the delegates to vote for them. Now, yesterday, the president himself, President Osafo Adu, stated he is not supporting any of the aspirants, but the camp of the former trade minister claimed their observations point to the contrary. Yao Boabiasamwa, who speaks for the Alan Chamanting camp, cites the Oti region, where he claims some district assemblies are reportedly using the district assembly common fund to purchase and distribute weedicides to induce delegates.
The fact that the president has been compelled to speak out shows how pervasive the perception is that there's organized support behind a particular candidate. So it's okay that the president as an individual says he doesn't support any of the others. And indeed, the president made a very, very significant statement. He said the spirit of the party will determine who actually wins this. And that I agree with him, except that the establishment is not working in that way. The establishment, which includes the president and others, are demonstrating otherwise. I mean, the finance minister chats and says that he is going to spend all the money he can to make sure that somebody wins.
Who is that somebody?
That somebody is the establishment candidate. That somebody is number 2.
Candidate?
That somebody is the vice president. I mean, we are all aware that he is the establishment candidate because the establishment is behind him. And the president says he is not behind him. So it's a signal that I think that the party must pick up. If the president says that he is not behind anybody, then the party delegates must stand up. The party delegates must resist any attempt from other people.
How do you want them to do this? How do you want the party
by rejecting some of the inducements and the threats. For example, that this Assembly's Common Fund. We were in OT, and this Assembly's Common Fund was sharing weedicides and fertilizers at this time to people. Why would they be doing that at that time?
Were they sharing to delegates?
They're sharing to delegates.
Those who be taking part in the
Super Delegates Congress? They were sharing to delegates.
And you have evidence?
We were there when it happened. We arrived immediately after the sharing. So you had delegates with boxes, some of them carrying it home, some of it with them right in the room where we were having the meeting.
Well, the campaign team of the vice president has categorically dismissed the allegations. Listen to Samuel Wuku, who speaks for the campaign team.
I've stated that the Honorable John Peter Amewu is a minister of the government, and in this government, and supporting the Honorable Alan Chamanting. The Honorable Abna Oseasa is a deputy minister for finance at the Ministry of Finance, supporting the Honorable Alan Chamanting. You've had members of parliament openly supporting the Honorable Alan Chamanting. So when you say that others supporting Dr. Bawumia is wrong, then that means you're only picking and choosing. Now we repeat, if the principle is wrong, then tell me that nobody should support anybody. Let's all become quiet men and women in the party and only watch the process. We are part of the decision. Well, I vote. I'm a voter. I'm a delegate. A super delegate because I'm a member of the National Council representing the Eastern region. And I'm also a former national organizer. So these two voting rights, I can only vote once in one category. Either I choose to vote as a former national organizer or I vote as a member representing the Eastern region on the National Council.
Well, his specific accusation is that they were in the OT region and the district assembly was using the district common fund to purchase fertilizer for delegates in support of your candidature, and they feel it is an abuse of the system. Yes.
I think people should get serious about this. But I don't think I have it. Else we'll be chasing things in circles. If you have, if you can prove an allegation of wrongdoing, it's a very serious matter. Mind you, the very things that we say to the Ghanaian people and to the public, these are the things that our opponents are going to compile and use against us. Even an internal election, you are telling me that we are using district assembly common fund to to purchase fertilizer. I mean, that is a very low point.
And that there is Samuel Oku, is the campaign manager for the Dr. Bawumia campaign team. I want to take you to the OT region, where the allegation is from the Alan Chamantin camp that the District Assembly Common Fund is being used to purchase weedicides and fertilizers for delegates as a part of this grand scheme to induce these delegates. Let's bring in the OT regional chairman of the MPP. Joins us on the telephone line right now. He is Evans Dapa. Mr. Dapa, thanks for your time here on Newsnight.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
You've had the allegation from the Alan Chamantin camp that in your region, the district chief executives are conspiring to use the District Assembly Common Fund to buy fertilizers and weedicides for delegates. Many of them are members of the party executives holding positions in the region. Is that true?
Well, I'll have to. I don't know what to say. This is quite outrageous because as a regional chairman, and to the best of my knowledge, I think the Assembly Common Fund is not meant for what the allegation they are putting out there. And for me, he who alleges must prove it, because it has not come to my table. And so, absolutely, I can't speak to this issue.
If it's not come to your table...
No, I think what they are putting out there is some sort of weak propaganda.
But you say it's not come to your table.
It has not come to my table because it's not true. Because I can't just phantom how the District Assembly will use its common fund to purchase fertilizers, weedicides to induce delegates. Is that possible?
You yourself, you are a delegate, are you not?
I'm a delegate myself.
Have you received any fertilizers and weedicides?
I have not received anything of that sort.
Well, you listen to Yabamia Samoa, who speaks for the Alan Chamantin campaign team. He says they saw it themselves. He saw it himself.
Well, he said he saw it himself. For me, I think this thing is something that ought to be treated with the contempt it deserves. Because the fact that you are seeing somebody carrying weedicide, and then you conclude by saying that it was bought by the District Assembly with the District Assembly Common Fund to induce delegates. Is that the best way? Is that how we should put it?
Are people carrying weedicides? Delegates carrying weedicides?
Well, I didn't see delegates carrying weedicides. I didn't see them. And when Alan Chamantin came, I was not even in the region. And so what they are saying, for me, I'm surprised. If he is saying he has seen delegates carrying weedicides, and because they are delegates, and because they are MPP people, it means that it is the vice president who bought it to induce what will inform their decision. That is quite unfortunate for me.
I mean, considering who was speaking there, Yababia Sama, former member of parliament on your party's ticket, is a senior member of the party. If what he says, as you say, is propaganda among your own self, what is it? And you are the chairman of the region. You tend to take action on this?
Well, for me, I think we need to condemn this kind of acts with no uncertain terms. But I think that if one is alleging, one should be prepared to prove it. Because if you are just throwing tantrums that you saw some delegates carrying weedicide, and because of that, you are telling the media that those things were bought by the district assemblies. I mean, Honorable Evans, let's just go deep into this. We shouldn't leave the matter there just like that, because I at least expect this kind of news from my own former member of parliament for Adenta.
So what do you plan to do about it if it shouldn't be left there?
Well, I will investigate, but to the best of my knowledge, I don't think there is anything like that going on in my region whatsoever.
Thank you very much, Evans Dapa. There's OT regional chairman of the governing New Patriotic Party. Still live here on Newsnight on Joy 99.7 FM. After business, I will take you to Niger, where Ghanaians living in that West African country continue to receive death threats of reprisals as well, as ECOWAS has less than a week to decide whether to use force to remove the military junta there.
The information that we are taking from the ground is if the ECOWAS use any force to intervene, they know that they have foreigners here. They are going to attack the foreigners.
Well, details as ECOWAS military chiefs say they have no other option but to confront the increasing military takeovers head on.
We cannot afford to be hamstrung by these challenges. Instead, we must confront them head on, drawing upon our shared experiences, wisdom, and the strength of our collective resolve.
I want to stay with us for that. George Riafe, who will be heading to Niger pretty shortly
to assess the economic impact of
the coup,
and then do that. And good evening, Honorable Evans.
Yeah, that one caught me there.
Okay.
No intention of being an honorable.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, you know what honorable means in Ghana, right? Either a member of parliament or a
minister of
DC.
state.
Oh, no, not at all.
Even the board chairman, they are not being called honorable.
Everybody's an honorable. Yeah. But Honorable George Riafe has a better ring to it than Honorable meant sound. It's not sexy at all. What do you have in the headlines?
Well, Evans, coming up in business, Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority justifies increase in port charges, insisting current global economic crisis and sleaze depreciation warrant the increase. And Talu Oil targets beginning of November this year to increase gas supply to government for power generation. The business news on Newsnights is brought to you by MTN Business. Welcome to the new world of business. Allianz Life and Ghana Pay.
Doing gets you learning. Learning starts you wondering. Wondering triggers thinking. Thinking becomes planning. Planning evolves to trying. After trying, you're succeeding, winning, owning. Now, doing that starts with outdoing your limits. Outdo them all with MTN. So, what are we doing today?
Son, we are so proud of you for setting up this hospital. I really love those hospital beds and waiting chairs. By the way, did you import them?
No, Dad, I didn't. I actually got them from Kingdom Books and Stationery right here in Ghana.
Wow. We also bought our office supplies, safes, executive desks and chairs from Kingdom, and they gave us expert advice on how to set up our office.
Guys, that makes 3 of us. I also got our sofa and bedroom sets, plus our dining hall furniture for our new home from Kingdom.
Wow, Mom, that makes 4 of us. I usually get my stationery items from Kingdom. And my teacher also mentioned that our classroom furniture was provided by Kingdom.
So there you have it. Whenever you're thinking about setting up an office or acquiring furniture for your home, etc., Kingdom Books and Stationery should be your first point of call. With over 40 years experience in the industry, we stock and supply a wide variety of globally sourced office and home furniture, stationery and equipment. Visit our head office, Osu Akwaje, or our office near the Osu Stadium. We're also in Tema Community 1, opposite Olam SHF, Kumasi KNUST campus, UCC Cape Coast, and now at the Marina Mall, Airport City. Or call us 0302 764101, 764209, or 762792. Visit our website www.kingdomgh.com.
No matter your water needs, Sintex has it all. Sintex tank was first to introduce double layer tank, and now you can have as many layers as you want. Sintex tank was first to introduce white inner layer tanks in Ghana, and now introduces the customer specs order, which will let you order any color and size you want. Sintex tanks gives you the biggest warranty of 7 years, which no other tank gives you. So whatever your water consumption, size of project, or demand, choose Sintex tank. Sintex tank, stress-free. Sintex tank, reliable. Sintex tank, maximum guarantee. Call 0244 335 168, Kumasi 0505 555 666, or visit sintexgh.com. Sintex tank, a strong, a tough. Do you know Flamingo paint has superior properties than any other paint brand on the market? Listen, when you take 1 bucket of Flamingo paint, is equal to several buckets of any paint brand on the market. So, Flamingo has superior hiding properties, superior coverage, it means it covers, and superior durability. Flamingo paint, superior hiding. Flamingo paint, superior coverage. Flamingo paint, superior durability. Flamingo paint, simply superior.
Whether I'm passing by the food market, visiting the salon, or filling up my tank for a spontaneous adventure with old friends in a new city, when asked, cash or card, it's always card for me. I switched from cash to card for all my payments with MasterCard. Now I get to do what I enjoy with ease.
Switch from cash to card for all your payments with MasterCard. MasterCard, the secure and convenient way to pay.
Media Sambisanda mo. Eti emrati no. Mumu hwan pa na tumi hwe na mo bodompe mo man yakono. Eye kwabna. No mumu hwan so na tumi tasmale me ma yene nyina de. Eye kojo. Enu kro. Kobre tumi hwe na bodompe mo sense o yisu president eba. Ayede yan ban ne do braye. Bo si echi na mo ho ban na sem mana ho de ne. Sa ani na kudwo so yisu president chako. Na no ne de e ma wo se wo ye krejen fita. Na watimi asiri bedwo ma na feel you. Ey kojo. Yeah. Pepsodent Heba and a Pepsodent Charcoal. Afedie, you're gonna natural.
FDIJ Jadion Katuyatu.
You're welcome back to Business on Newsnight. Now, Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority has justified the increase in port charges, insisting the current global economic crisis and the city's depreciation warrant the review. This was captured in the statement issued by managers of the country's ports earlier today. They also maintained that there was broad stakeholder consultation before the charges were reviewed. They also insist that not all items will be affected by this adjustment. So how are the port authorities planning to implement these charges? Well, the following report has more on the guidelines issued by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority.
Based on documents seen by Joy Business, the review will affect every category of service that it carried out at the country's port from August 1, 2023. However, the Ghana Port and Harbours Authority has maintained that vessels that berth in the country's port before the beginning of this month will be excused from these charges. However, those that arrived before August 1 but started discharging their goods and products after this date shall still be asked to pay the new charges. Persons that even have their goods stored at the port and are in the process of clearing their stuff after August 1, 2023, it is not clear for now what might have influenced these charges. But coming just after reduction in activities at the port, some have described these new developments as interesting.
And that is a business tax report. Meanwhile, traders are threatened to divert their imports to neighboring ports if these charges are not reviewed. Osafo Adu is president of the Ghana Union of Trade Association.
Allow them to make increase only barely a year now. So they cannot continue to increase the tariff, especially at this time that we are all complaining that cost of doing business in this country is extremely high. And that is collapsing businesses. Even it's not good even for the port authorities themselves, because barely 4 months ago they called and complained that the port is not having the needed traffic that it used to be, and that we should find a solution to it. And we said that the problem has been the cost of doing business. At that port, picture is not taking. Most of us are going to do our business through the lobby port, because the port here is too much. That happened. Is it going to help the country?
Osafo Adu is the president of the Ghana Union of Traders Association. Tally Oil is targeting to increase the amount of gas it sells to government for power generation from the Jubilee fields beginning, that is November this year. This is what Joy Business has picked up from persons within the operations of Talu. There is more in this report.
Tallow oil is targeting these new levels after government requested that it is looking for 200 million standard cubic feet of gas per day from the last quarter of this year. Tallow currently supplies 100 million standard cubic feet of gas a day from Jubilee and the Chinabua in Yura and Tome 10 fields. It is now selling the gas from these fields to government under the interim gas sales agreement from January this year. This was when the free export of gas to government ended in December this year. The interim gas supply, which began this year, will end in September. However, sources close to Tallow have indicated that it may need to expand its operation on the Jubilee and the 10 oil fields in terms of new oil fields to meet this request from government. Tallow Oil is currently discussing with government to secure approval for its 10 oil fields plan of development, which will help increase oil production from those fields. However, some industry persons are worried about whether government will be able to pay for the new price for gas supplied from the country's oil fields and how that could impact on the country's power generation.
And that is the Business Desk report. Economist Dr. Ishmael Yamson is challenging private sector to do more to ensure that their interests are protected. It follows concerns by some private firms that most policies being implemented by government is hurting their operations. Dr. Yamson insists most of these private firms have not helped themselves based on their actions.
And I remember many years ago, far back in the early 80s, that when we formed the private sector foundation, we had a private sector, public sector dialogue. And we influenced a lot of the legislation and government actions, and we did it together. Today, even among the private sector institutions, they are fighting. Recently, when we were having the debate about go or no go to IMF, did you hear the boss of any private sector organization publicly advising government to go to the fund? No. And I say, why? Don't you realize that the impact will come to you direct? Now, they are all crying about new taxes. But when they had the opportunity to join with government to say, hang on, guys, we are all in this together. We don't believe that what you are doing will take us anywhere. No.
Dr. Ishmael Yamson is an economist. Now, MTN says it is putting in place measures to help improve trade within the region as well as support small businesses in the country. Solomon Dadivo is chief executive of MTN, and he has been speaking at an investor conference in Accra.
So these are all opportunities for us to enhance some of these opportunities by supporting these economic moves, by bringing our fintech platform to bear. There are other services that we can think about. Payments more broadly. Today, merchant payments, we're still talking about 250 to 300,000 merchants that currently use Momo to pay to pay at these merchant points. When the addressable market for merchants, nobody knows what the size is. I have a different number from everybody else. My number is much, much, much bigger, but it's somewhere between 3 million and 5 million, right? So, I mean, that's a 50x, maybe I should be conservative here, but 25x growth on where we are today to get to about 5 million. And that's a massive opportunity that still requires a lot of investment, a lot of effort, not just in financial investment, but also education.
And Solomon Dadivo is chief executive of MTN Ghana. And on PM Express tonight, Evans, you're looking at the Bank of Ghana's laws for last year and how that could impact on its mandates and its operations going forward for this year.
Indeed. And you have just the right man for that conversation. And this is the Director of Research at the bank, at the Central Bank. He's been talking, saying a few more things in the last 24 hours. Some of it pretty controversial, but some of it we also knew before. I played a bit of that today where he talks about pursuing this recapitalization support, asking government for recapitalization support. That is something that had already been anticipated in the IMF program. But the IMF had suggested...
The argument that is one of the options on the table, whether they themselves would take steps to build buffers or they could also fall on government for some capital injection.
But the big question there is, does government have what it takes right now to support the BOG financially is a big question. In fact, the reason why we are where we are right now with the Bank of Ghana, mainly, according to him, is down to the DDEP.
Basically. But we heard more on him on that with respect to how to recapitalize the bank and also whether the Bank of Ghana had or did indeed print money or they didn't print money. He also clarified all those things.
And how much it cost us in
and
doing so.
also
And then the question that the minority have raised today, which is that we learned that the government is writing off part of that debt.
Yeah.
The minority has insisted that can happen if they've not gone to Parliament for approval.
So it's at 9 p.m. on PM Express as we engage the Director of Research at the Bank of Ghana as you look at the Bank of Ghana's loss for last year and the impact on its mandate. On Joy News at 9 p.m. and all our social media platforms tonight on Joy News.
And many will also want you to ask him the expenditure. I mean, he says 90% plus of the loss is attributable to the domestic direction. But then you also see in that audit that they also spend money on things that the public have questioned, right? So let's probe that. You want to join George and his guest tonight at 9 p.m. You're live on Newsnight. It's on Joy 99.7. If I want to read a few of your messages coming through on our WhatsApp console now. And I'm hearing many of you talking about the ECOWAS. I'll bring you details of that pretty shortly. But on the subject of the NPP, the NPP government built the Jubilee House at the cost of 250. Saglame is a viable project. They should stop wasting our resources. Charleston Legon sent us that one. Abochi Philip from Keta. The NPP government has disposed of the Saglame project seriously. Nana Ado and his ministers are wasting our taxpayers' money for nothing, he says. And Nana on the Spinters Road says, please, some of us are old enough to know most of the tricks our politicians play. The assumption is NDC got their cut from the low-cost housing project they instigated before the current must also start theirs. So they have to also cut the sword. Steel and Salt Pond says, what was the $200 million borrowed for? Didn't it include the now talked of additional words and costs? I remember John Mahama commissioning the project and the Commander Sugar Factory when it was not also completed. Kofi Seidu says it is an illegality for Dr. Bawumia campaign team to be using the District Assembly's common fund. Well, we've had the chairman of the region for the party categorically say that isn't true. Well, many of you are also concerned about what is happening within ECOWAS, particularly in Niger. Joe in Nankanduru says ECOWAS president should rather be concerned about the corrupt and greedy leaders it has in their member countries. And Frankenho says the so-called ECOWAS head of state must handle this coup issue diplomatically to avoid destabilizing the SAP region. And it's that story at 10 next, because some Ghanaians in Niger say they are living in fear after they were threatened with reprisal attacks following ECOWAS announcement that it may resort to military force to restore constitutional order after coup d'etat there last week. Now, president of the Ghanaian community in Niger, Seydou Abudu, tells Joy News, although they are going about their daily activities, they have been warned of possible reprisals if ECOWAS goes ahead to deploy the troops into the country. Now, presidential guards last week deposed the democratically elected president, Mohamed Bazoum, prompting condemnation from West African leaders who have issued a week's ultimatum to the military junta to hand over power, else they will deploy a military force to restore order.
And right now the situation is calm. What the information that we are taking from the ground is, if the ECOWAS use any force to intervene, they know that they have foreigners here. They are going to attack the foreigners. This is what the information that we take at any intervention that the ECOWAS are going to use force to attack the national. Yes.
And so how is the Ghanaian embassy, for instance, in Niger dealing with this? Have you been told to move to a place of safety? Because, for instance, I was just reading this evening that the French embassy is doing an evacuation or carrying out an evacuation for those who are living in Niger. What's the sort of help you're receiving from the Ghanaian mission there?
Right now, the situation is calm, and we have some engagement, and they continue to advise us in situation. We should stay home, and if there's any activities which is going foreigners, we should draw ourselves out. So we are engaging with, and they are updating us every day what is happening to protect Ghanaians in this country. Even yesterday we went to work. Today too we went to.
Well, as we know, in currently, there's a meeting currently underway from the 4th of August till the 4th of August by the ECOWAS Committee of Chiefs of Defense Staff, holding this extraordinary meeting on the political situation in Niger. The Chiefs of Defense Staff from West Africa say they have been left with no option but to confront this head-on because of the increasing number of coup d'etats that we're seeing in the sub-region. Blaise Soga of our Foreign Affairs Desk has a report on what transpired on day one of the meeting in Nigeria yesterday, plus a reaction from the military ruler in Niger.
Authority of ECOWAS heads of states and government at their extraordinary session held on the 30th of July 2023 in Abuja, Nigeria, resolved to use all necessary means to restore constitutional order, including the deployment of an ECOWAS military force if the democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum is not reinstated by the Presidential Guard, which seized power last week. In furtherance of these directives, a committee of chiefs of defense staff of ECOWAS member states are holding an extraordinary meeting on the political situation in the Republic of Niger from now until the 4th of August 2023. Christopher Musa is Chief of Defense Staff for the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The political instability in Niger is a source of grave concern for us all. It threatens our shared vision of a peaceful, secure and prosperous West Africa, a vision that is impossible to achieve amidst political upheavals and disruptions to constitutional order. The task of restoring democratic governance in Niger is fraught with potential hurdles and complications. However, we cannot afford to be hamstrung by these challenges. Instead, we must confront them head-on, drawing upon our shared experiences, wisdom, and the strength of our collective resolve.
Well, you're confronting this head-on. Let's speak to security consultants to the African Union. Colonel Festus Abuaji joins us right now. Colonel, thanks for your time here on Newsnight. We heard the defense minister, our defense minister earlier, that's Dominic Nitiwo, say that Ghana will contribute troops if the regional body ECOWAS decide to use force to restore constitutional order in Niger. Considering what we're hearing tonight from Ghanaians living in that country, is that a smart decision? And is it even realistic?
Well, thanks for having me. Each state party to the ECOWAS revised treaty has an obligation, to fulfill the decisions of ECOWAS. But each state also has to determine whether that decision is in the national interest, its national interest. It's a tension that needs to be resolved. So if Ghana has decided to join the threat of the use of force, that's a choice that the government has made. But each choice, each decision comes with consequences and risk. And I hope that the government, and for that matter, any government that is going to be part of this intervention force, is actually sitting around the table to calculate the risk. One obvious trick is that this is going to be what in military terms we call an opposed entry. So nobody is going to welcome you with flower bouquets and so on. You need to fight your way, whether by air or by land, because Niger is landlocked, to get to the ground. Your intelligence has to be smart as to where this head of state in ECOWAS words is being held hostage, and you need to be surgical about securing that president and then having all the necessary arrangements to reinstate him as the head of state. The intelligence assessment must tell the ECOWAS forces how ready or not ready the Niger forces are. But they have sworn, in conjunction with the solidarity of Mali and Burkina Faso, that they will not accept that kind of intervention. So we only need to go back to history. And one of the lessons that we can have is our operations in Liberia. We need to be ready to accept certain levels of casualties. So far, no government, at least our government, has not told us what the acceptable level of casualties are. I mean, to the soldiers. In the case of Liberia also, we first said that we're going in to extricate Ghanaians and other West African nationals who were held behind, the front lines under hostage by the IMPFL of Prince Johnson and Charles Taylor's MPFL. So as you are hearing from the Ghanaians, it may not be that the CNSP or the Nigerian armed forces will be attacking ECOWAS citizens. But it may very well be the case that ordinary Nigerian citizens who may be disillusioned with ECOWAS and who do not see why ECOWAS must intervene in their internal affairs are the ones who may, put lives at risk.
And
Ghana needs to. Hello.
And Kenno, you're right. I mean, that's what we're hearing from our Ghanaian counterparts there, that is what is happening because the honorary folks who have welcomed this junta are opposed to any form of foreign intervention. And thank you very much. This is something that we'll explore in greater depth subsequently. I just have a quick minute because I've just been joined also by the ranking on the Foreign Affairs Committee in Parliament, Samokuji Tablauka. Mr. Tablauka, in a minute, what should government do, particularly with the Ghanaians stranded there who are saying they're receiving threats?
Well, good evening, Evans. It is time for government to reassess the situation. I know that government's initial position was not to evacuate, but I think that looking at the new turn of events, the junta leader addressed the country last night and asked the people to rise and defend themselves and warned against any foreign intervention. Now that ECOWAS has said that they are considering a military intervention as a last resort, there will be the need for Ghana to reassess its position on the Nigerian situation, and our committee will recommend strongly that if possible we follow the examples of countries like the US, France, Germany, Italy, and others who have evacuated their nationals. It should not be too late to do that, considering that we are becoming a target. I mean, we are a leader when it comes to the ECOWAS sub-region. So any ECOWAS intervention, Ghana will certainly be on the top of the mind of the Nigerians. And considering the address of their president last night, we really need to do a reassessment of the risks, particularly to our nationals. We are told that there are about 500 to 600 Ghanaians, registered Ghanaians, who have formed an association. That's a significant number. I mean, you can begin to even imagine those who are not yet,
we don't know yet, and we haven't accounted for. Thank you very much. This is a fast-moving development, and we'll keep across that for you. What's in sports, Mubao?
Well, Evans, just a quick update in sports. The elective congress for the election of the Ghana Football Association President and Executive Council members will come off on September 27, 2023, as announced by the Election Committee of the Ghana Football Association. The committee on Thursday, August 3, reviewed the roadmap for the much anticipated event, indicated the timelines and activities to follow for the next election. So nominations can start to be picked on August 7, and we understand that nomination needs to be filed by August 11, and afterwards there will be the vetting of candidates on August 31, and finally September 27, the elections will happen.
Well, thank you very much, Bao, there. And right up to me, you really want to stay with us, not here, but on social media, because we are bringing you a very interesting conversation. The EcoBank Joy Habitat Fair, home ownership, making smart decisions. And that is on Twitter Spaces. And I see many of you already congregating around this particular conversation on Twitter. Kojo Yangsing will be hosting this. Find him at Kojo Yangsing. You really want to join that. Follow us also at Joy News on TV also to join. Follow at Joy News on TV to join. Remember, it's Twitter Spaces, hashtag EcoBank, Joy Habitat Fair, homeownership, making smart decisions, and it's now starting 7. You want to join that conversation hosted by Kojo Yangsing. And right here live is Reverend Professor Joseph Osafo Adu, who's the acting director for the Center for Aging Studies, University of Ghana. He is Lexis Bill's guest on Personality Profile.